Okay, good morning, everybody. Today is Shabbos, Daf Yud Gimel. We'll begin from the Mishnah, Yud Gimel and Aleph, 113a1. New Mishnah. Kaishrin Deli Bifsikya. You're allowed to tie a pail with a girdle, avoloi bechevel, but not with a rope. So a girdle is something that you use. You're not just going to leave it there. You're going to use it for something else. So we know you're not going to leave it there. That makes it better because it's not going to be permanent. Again, we've discussed that when it comes to tying knots, we look at what type of knot it is and we look at how permanent it is. There's actually a major machlokas. Which one is the primary aspect that we look at? And again, there's three levels of the knot. Somebody's got some background noise there. There are certain knots that are going to be biblically forbidden, certain that are rabbinically forbidden, and some that are permitted. And that depends, according to some Rishonim, on the structure of the knot, if it's like a more of a permanent type or temporary. And others say it depends on the goal here and your intent of how long it was set up to be for. So if you tie it with a girdle, you know you're going to take it off. That gives a degree of temporariness. But you cannot tie a pail with a rope because that you could leave on permanently. Rabbi Yehuda Mater, Rabbi Yehuda allows it. Rabbi Yehuda said a rule: Kol kasher she'eino shel kayama ein chayav of any knot which is not permanent, you would not be liable for. Okay. Bill wants to know if this Mishnah is saying that if you make some change, something abnormal about the knot, does that make it permitted? Michael says it's not the knot, it's the material. So in general, abnormalcy knocks things down from biblical to only rabbinical. That's a general rule of thumb. But aside from that, that's not the main concept here. It's not that it's abnormal. The concept here is that it's more of a temporary knot versus a permanent one, based on the item you're using. If you use an item that has some value, not here, but has value to be eventually take it off because you want to use the girdle for something else, that tells us, that's an indicator that it's more temporary type of knot. That's the reason why it would be okay. That's what we're saying, because you're going to use the girdle to take it off the pail. That means it's done more temporary. That's what allows it. Okay? So chevel demai. So we said you are not allowed to tie a rope on a pail. Now chevel demai, what type of rope are we referring to? Ilema chevel de'alma. If we're talking about an ordinary rope, Rabbi Yehuda Mater, how could Rabbi Yehuda allow it? Kesher shal kayamahu. So that's a permanent knot. Hi Tati, welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
Where are we?
Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. We're beginning the Gemara. It's around 10 lines from the top. See that? Right? Beginning the Gemara?
Yes, I got it.
Yeah, Chevel. So again, the Mishnah says you're allowed to tie a pail with a girdle, but not tie a pail with a rope, and then Rabbi Yehuda allows it. So the question is, what type of rope is Rabbi Yehuda allowing? Chevel demai, what type of rope? Ilema chevel da'alma. If we're talking about a regular rope, Rabbi Yehuda Mater, how could Rabbi Yehuda allow that? Kasher shel kayamahu, that is permanent. If you tie a rope on a pail and you start using this, you created a permanent structure. Nobody allows that. Alachevel degardi, it must be some other type of rope. It's a weaver's rope. Now the weaver needs his rope for his work, so he's not going to leave it permanently there. So then, since it's a temporary knot, therefore Rabbi Yehuda would allow it. So now, if that's the case, we know the rabbis, the Rabbanan in the Mishnah, don't allow it. So why would they not allow the weaver's rope? It must be that it's a rabbinic concern that if we allow you to use the weaver's rope, which is only temporary, you might come to use some other rope, which would be permanent. So Lememra, the Rabbanan Savri Gazina Chevel de Gardia de Chevel de Alma. So it sounds like, again, going through step by step of the Mishnah. So Mishnah, we have machlokas between the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda, whether you're allowed to tie a rope on a pail. It cannot be talking about a regular rope. Because a regular rope, you'll leave it there for good. There's no way Rabbi Yehuda would allow that. It must be talking about a type of rope that is definitely, you're going to take it off, like a weaver's rope. So then what's the machlokas? It must be the machlokas is, do we make a rabbinic decree that if we allow you to use the weaver's rope, you might come to use a regular rope? So it seems like The Rabbanan hold that we make a decree that if you use a weaver's rope, you might come to use a regular rope. Rabbi Yehuda Savar Legazrin, and Rabbi Yehuda holds we don't make that decree, and therefore the weaver's rope is okay. V'Raminu will ask you contradiction now from a brisa which says Chevel delif shenifsak. If the rope of a pail snapped in the middle, lo yehe koishrei. So again, the rope of a pail snapped in the middle. So this is different. Meaning the case before, we are tying a rope onto a pail. This case was you have a rope in a pail and it snapped in the middle. Lo yahay kaishra, you should not tie the two ends with a regular knot because that's permanent. Ella einvai, rather make a bow. Rabbi Yehuda says, kairech la punda piskia, you're allowed to wind a hollow belt or girdle around the two ends, uvelvad shelo yanvenu, as long as you don't tie the two ends into a bow. So it sounds like Rabbi Yehuda is concerned. So Rabbi Yehuda holds you have to take an external piece of material and just wrap it around the two ends of the rope. He holds you cannot make these two ends of the rope that snapped into a bow. So it sounds like Rabbi Yehuda is concerned if we allow you to make a bow, you'll make a knot. It seems like the Rabbanan are not concerned that if we allow you to make a bow, you'll make a knot, which is the exact opposite of our Mishnah, because in our Mishnah, the Rabbanan were concerned that if you use a weaver's rope, you might come to use a regular rope. And Rabbi Yehuda was not concerned. Yeah, by the case of the rope of the pail that snapped in the middle, it sounds like we have the exact opposite opinions. So again, Rabbi Yehuda says you cannot make a bow. Kashya Rabbi Yehuda. We have a contradiction within Rabbi Yehuda. Why, by the case of the weaver's rope, does not make a decree, you might come to use a regular rope, but yet by making a bow, he did make a decree that you might come to make a knot. Kashya Rabbanan. Then we have a contradiction within the Rabbanan, because in our Mishnah, the Rabbanan say you cannot use a weaver's rope because you might come to use a regular rope. Yet in this case of the Brisa, they say we're not concerned. So we have double contradictions. The Gemara says Rabbanan lakasha. The Rabbanan is not a question. Chevel michlaf. They say one type of rope with another type of rope is too easy to get mixed up. And therefore, we cannot allow you to use a weaver's rope to tie into a pail because you might come to use a regular rope. Those are two interchangeable. However, aniva b'kshira lemichlaf, the difference between a bow and a knot is more distinct than the difference between two types of rope. And therefore, the Rabbanan are concerned if we allow you to make a bow, you might come to make a knot. So that's the Rabbanan's opinion. Rabbi Yehuda lakasha. Rabbi Yehuda is not a question. Hasam loy mishum de michlafa niva b'kshira. It's not that Rabbi Yehuda is concerned that if we allow you to make a bow, you might come to make a knot. Ela niva gufa kshirahi. Rabbi Yehuda holds the act of making a bow itself is called tying. Making a bow that has a degree of permanence is like tying. So again, so Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is he's not concerned that if you use one type of rope, you might come to use another type of rope. And he's not concerned if you make a bow, you might come to make a knot. But he is concerned that making a bow itself is making a knot. So it's not a decree you might come to do something. He holds a bow can have a degree of permanence to it. Okay. Amar Rab Abba, Amar Rav Chia bar Ashi, Amar Rav. Rab Abba said name Rav Chia bar Ashi, name Rav. Maybe Adam Chevel. A person's allowed to bring a rope from his house, and he's allowed to tie one end of it to a cow and the other end of it to a feeding receptacle. Okay, so if you want to tie your cow to its feeding receptacle so it'll always have food, you are allowed to do that. Now, there's two possible concerns with doing this. The first concern is you might release the cow by untying the knot around its head and leave the other end of it permanently tied to the receptacle. So it comes out when you tie the part to the receptacle, that was permanent. Or you might just untie the knot connecting the rope to the receptacle and leave the other end permanently tied to the cow, Rashi says. So theoretically, you should be very concerned because in order to detach the cow from the feeding receptacle, which eventually you'll do, all you need to do is untie one of the two. So maybe one of the two has a degree of permanence, the one that you're going to leave on him. We're not concerned about that, and you're allowed to do it. Again, because that's considered temporary, we're assuming you're going to take them both off. The tall one. Who is Rav Acha bar Papa? Challenge the statement of Rav Abba based on this price. So, The Brisa says a rope whose one end is tied to a feeding receptacle, you're allowed to tie the other end to a cow, vishaba para, and if you have a rope that is already tied to the cow, kaishrei be'evos, you're allowed to tie the other end to a feeding receptacle. As long as you make sure not to bring a new rope from your house, and tie one end to the cow and one end to the feeding receptacle. It seems pretty clear from the Brisa, one tying will allow you to do on Shabbos, but not both of them, not both. Yet Rav said you are allowed to tie both ends on Shabbos. The Gemara says, Hasam Chavel Dalma. The Brisa is talking about an ordinary rope, which you are tempted to just leave it there permanently. That's why it's a problem to tie both ends. We're here talking about a weaver's rope. A weaver's rope, anyways, you're not going to leave it permanently because you need it for your weaving process, and that's why Rav said that you're allowed to do it. Okay, now once we mentioned the weaver's rope, we're now going to switch to the halachas of muktzah. So we're taking a little detour from the halachas of knots to the halachas of muktzah, because once we mentioned the weaver's rope, let's talk more about the weaving implements. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Yehuda said name Shmuel. Klei kiva'e mutter l'taltal and b'Shabbos. You're allowed to move weaver's implements on Shabbos. Now, we haven't done justice to muktzah yet, but basically there's different categories regarding what items can be moved on Shabbos. You have a concept of a kli shel malachta l'Isser, a utensil whose primary function is for a prohibited work. Then you can also have a muktzah machmas chesaron kiss, which is that something that you're concerned for a financial loss if you move it, that's actually even a higher level of muktzah. So kli shel malachta l'Isser, a utensil that's primary function is for something prohibited. The halacha is you're allowed to move it l'tzarech gufa makomo. If you want to use it for a permitted function, or you need the location that it's in, you are allowed to move it. For example, a hammer is a kli shel malachta l'Isser. It's not that you're concerned about ruining the hammer if you use it, just it's malachta l'Isser. Its primary function is to drive nails into the wall, which is a forbidden malacha on Shabbos. However, if I have a nut to crack, and I want to use my hammer to crack the nut, you are allowed to take the hammer to crack the nut, even though the hammer is muktzah, but that's called you're moving it l'tzarech gufo umakomo, using it for its own purpose for permitted use. Or let's just say my hammer is on my table, and I need to put my flowers down on the table in that same location. I am allowed to move the hammer. However, let's say I have an item that I don't want to move, not because its primary function is forbidden, but because I'm concerned about a financial loss. So if I'm a business person and I sell shoes, okay, let's just say Michael was concerned, don't touch my shoes because I need to sell them to my customers. I don't know if he has that concern or not, but if he would have that concern, nobody goes near my shoe racks because I need them for my customers. That would be muktzah machmas chesaron kiss. He's concerned about ruining the shoes. They're designated for his business. So that would be a higher degree of muktzah, which in general you cannot move it at all, okay? Comes along Rav Yehuda named Shmuel. He says you're allowed to move weaver's implements on Shabbos. Now, seemingly a weaver's implement is a kli shel malachta l'Isser. It's a utensil. Its primary function is for something that is forbidden. Now, I don't need Rav Yehuda named Shmuel to tell me that you can move something l'tzarech gufa makomo for its own sake, for a permitted purpose, because that we already know. So what would Rabbi Yehuda named Shmuel be teaching us? So there's two possibilities. Either he's teaching us, don't be concerned they're muktzah machmas chesaron kiss, that they're forbidden on account of a monetary loss, because then you would not be allowed to use it. So he's telling us, no, rather it's a kli shel malachta l'Isser. It's just a primary function for something forbidden. Therefore, you are allowed to move it. Or it could be Rabbi Yehuda named Shmuel holds a kli shel malachta l'Isser is actually not allowed to be moved, not like we paskin. And he's telling us these, though, don't fall into that category and you are allowed to move them. Again, we'll see more about this as we go through the halachas of muktzah. So again, Amar Rav Yehuda. Michael wants to know if there's a distinction between moving it and using it. So Michael wants to know. Michael wants to know if you're allowed to move muktzah so a child does not injure himself on it.
Or it's lost or broken
Or so it doesn't get lost or broken. So Michael's throwing it in like ors, but actually they're very different categories. Moving the scalpel so the scalpel does not get ruined is not so simple at all. Because there you're actually moving muktzah for the sake of protecting muktzah. That's not l'tzarach gufa makom. It's not to use it for a permitted function. It's not for its location. You just want to you want to protect the muktzah item itself. That's not so simple. Okay, that was we actually had that yesterday by the case of the shoes that fell off the foot in the Carmelis, where we said if it would be muktzah, the Rishonim have a difficult time understanding why you would be allowed to put it on your foot in order to save the shoe, because that's not simple at all to move muktzah to protect the muktzah. If you're moving muktzah, Michael's other question was, you want to use a surgeon's scalpel to cut vegetables. So that would depend what category of muktzah the scalpel falls in. If the surgeon is concerned that nobody touches scalpel because they might ruin it, that would be klish muktzah machmas uchzaron kis on account of financial loss. And then you would not be allowed, it would be very difficult to find cases where you're allowed to move it. If there's a concern about a child being injured, maybe we could talk about that. Definitely they talk about muktzah for the sake of public danger, that might be allowed because it could be for the sake of public danger, will approve of a rabbinic allowing you to move the muktzah. So again, Michael, you really referenced 3 or 4 different categories there at the same time. So if it's to protect the muktzah itself, generally we will not allow that. If you want to use the scalpel to cut vegetables, it depends what category it fits into, whether it's a klisha malachta isser or muktzah machmas kis. That would generally depend on how particular people are that people don't touch their scalpel because they're concerned it will get ruined or not. So again, you have to figure out what categories. They talk about this by the mohel's knife. Is a mohel allowed to use his knife for something else? These are discussions. Okay. So again, it comes along with Yehuda Shmuel. He says, Klei kevay mutal taldim Shabbos. You're allowed to move the weaver's implements in Shabbos. And again, it could be he just means l'tzarach gufa makoma for a permitted purpose or for its location. Bo minei Rav Yehuda. They inquired of Rav Yehuda. Koved ha'alyon v'koved ha'tachtamau. How about the upper beam and the lower beam? These are heavy cylindrical beams that are part of the loom. So the warp hangs from the upper beam. As you go through the weaving process, it's wound around the lower beam. So what is their status? Do they have the same status as the weaver's implements, which they call the lays rods, which are not muktzah or klish malachta isser, or maybe due to their extreme heaviness, maybe they're a higher level of muktzah, which would make them into klish malachta isser or muktzah machmas chasaron kis. That's what they asked of Yehuda. In velav verafia biyade, he said yes, they are muktzah. He said no, they're not muktzah. I'm sorry. He said yes, you're allowed to move them. He said no, you're not allowed to move them. And he couldn't come up. He wasn't able to resolve it. Meaning, it was a big question. What is the status of these beams? Are they considered muktzah? Are they not considered muktzah? What status of muktzah are they? Itmar was stated to Amr. We're now in 113a3. Amr of Nachman, Amr Shmuel of Nachman and Shmuel. Klei kivay mutal taldim Shabbos. You are allowed to move weavers' implements in Shabbos. And again, there's 2 approaches in this Gemara. Some are saying that it's a klisha malachta hitter, a utensil that's primary purpose is something permitted, which is very difficult to understand how you can say its primary function is for something permitted if it's part of the weaver's loom. Others say we're just saying it's a klisha malachta isser, something its primary function is for something forbidden, but you are still allowed to use it, l'tzarach gufa makomo, and it's not called muktzah on account of financial loss. So again, Idmar stated, Amr of Nachman, or Shmuel of Nachman, and Shmuel, Klei kivay mutal taldim Shabbos, who are allowed to move weavers' implements on Shabbos. Afilu koved aliyim v'koved tachton, even the upper beam and the lower beams, avaloyas hamudim, but not the posts. So there are posts that that hold it up. Those, they say, these are 2 upright, perforated posts placed into holes in the ground, supported the upper and lower beams. He said, these you're not allowed to move. Amalei Rav of Nachman. So Rava said to Nachman, "My shna amudim delay. Why is it that you're telling me the upper beams and the lower beams of the weaver's implement? Yes, you are allowed to move, but the posts that hold it into the ground, you're not allowed to move." Seemingly, regarding muktzah, you should have the same status. So, what other issue could there be if you remove a post from the ground? Gil says digging. If your post is in the ground, in the dirt, right? So what happens when you take the post out of the dirt? You now have a hole in the ground, right? Which we said, what malacha is making a hole in the ground? So it depends, we said, if you're indoors or outdoors, right? What do we say? Outdoors is what Gil and Michael said, which is plowing. How about indoors? Making a hole in your floor indoors. What malacha is that?
Yes. You can't do that. Can't do that in your house.
What malacha?
It's not the final blow. No. No.
What malacha?
Smoothing.
What do you say, Steve?
Smoothing out.
Steve says mamachik. No, that would be if you smooth out the hole. But we're talking about if you made the hole. Making a hole is not smoothing. It's the opposite of smoothing. Well, not the opposite of smoothing, but it's not smoothing. Think about this. How do you build a house? You have to make holes in the floor, right? Part of building the house, right? So it's actually a bona we've seen. It's part of building. You need holes in your floor for a constructive purpose. That's bona. That's building. Okay.
But the hole was there already. All you did was move the.
Excellent question, Carrie. The $1 million question. Gil and Michael are saying you're not allowed to take out the post because you're making a hole. Carrie says, that's not true. You didn't make a hole. When you pull out a post, are you making a hole? No. Why are you not making a hole? The hole's already there. The hole's been there since you put the post in. What? Gil says you're enlarging a hole. Who says you're enlarging a hole? When you pull a pole out of the ground, you didn't make a hole. It looks like you made a hole, but you did not. The hole was there. If I have a post that's in the ground, right? If I have a post in the ground right now and I pull it out of the ground, did I just make a hole?
No, you expose the hole.
From where? No. Michael wants to know if you take a rock out of the soil, you're making a hole. The answer is no, you're not making a hole. The hole is already there. All you're doing is taking out the thing that was filling the hole. You did not make a hole.
But that's some kind of plowing. When you're moving that thing, that's some kind of movement. You have.
I'm not affecting the ground. The way, if you could look at this, right? There's a pole right now in a hole in the ground. When you take out the pole, you actually did not do anything to the ground. The only thing you did was take out the thing that was filling the hole. So let's see this. Carrie, you should be majorly complimented. Michael said he agrees to your point.
Oh, no, I didn't say that.
No, clarification. He says he hears your point. Not necessarily agree.
Asking what his intent was.
Yeah, I don't want to go there right now.
Because he likes the intent.
Okay. When you dig a hole, you make a hole in the ground. Michael wants to say, well, every time you make a hole, you should never be liable because there's air filling up the hole. The answer is, but it's a usable hole. You made a usable place, right? But over here, it's different. When you have air in a hole does not impede the usage of the air does not impede the usage of the hole, right? When you have a post in the ground, granted I can't use the hole, but bottom line is there's a hole there already. So Amarle, Rav Nachman, Rav said to Nachman, my shnam udim delay. Why are you telling me that the post you're not allowed to move, but the implements on top and bottom, the beams you are allowed to move? What's the difference? If you want to tell me the issue is that when I pull the post out of the ground, I'm making a hole, which again is bona, which is building in the house. Gumos memela kahavian, the gumos, the holes come into existence automatically, which means I don't create the existence of the hole. All I'm doing is making, they're there already. They've been there all along. And I'll prove to you that that's not called making a hole. The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah in Kalaim, hatoimin lefes utzinaines tachas hagefen. Somebody buries a turnip or a radish in the ground under a grapevine. And your goal is to store it there, okay? Instead of having fridges, just start storing your vegetables in the ground, okay? And you bury it under a grapevine. Now, what bell goes off in your head when you hear a grapevine and radishes? Kalayim, right? So is that going to be a problem with kalayim or not? So like this, in mixas olav megulin, if some of the leaves of the turnip or the radish are still exposed, that's not called, we'll see basically what the relevance. Eino cheshesh, you have no concerns. Loimishim kalayim, you don't have to be concerned with kalayim. You're not planting things together. You're just storing your radishes there. So that's not going to be a kalayim issue. V'loimishim shvius, there's not going to be an issue of violating shmita. which means you're not allowed to plant the ground on Shemitah. That's not called planting. V'lei mishum meiser. Now, let's say you already tithed your produce, and then you put these vegetables into ground. Maybe it's as if they're reborn when you pull them out, so maybe you have to re-tithe them. The answer is no. It's not like they didn't lose their meiser status. Okay, v'nitolen b'Shabbos, and you're allowed to remove them on Shabbos by just grasping the leaves and pulling them out. Okay. Michael says, hold on. Why are you allowed to pull the turnabout by its leaves? You're still making a hole. What's the answer?
Are you building?
Carrie, what's the answer? Why is it not a problem making a hole?
Are you building?
No, it's not your intent. You're trying to do something else.
Michael wants to know, am I saying the hole's there already? Yes, the hole's there already. You're not making a hole because the hole's there. When you pull a turnip out of the ground, what do you see? That's not called making a hole because the hole's there.
Yeah.
Under the soil, it creates space where it loses a hole.
Okay, well here we're not, it's not being planted. You're just storing it there.
Once you remove that, you are creating,
What?
you're creating an empty space.
Would it be digging?
Like Gil says, you're creating an empty space.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the question on the table. If you have a pre-existing hole, just you have something that is in the hole. If you pull that thing out of the hole, is that called that you created a hole or not? Now I give it to you, there's two ways to view that.
Yeah.
On the one hand, I didn't have a functional hole right now and I've created one, right? But what do we see from our Gemara? We see that removing something from a hole is not called making a hole.
But then why don't you pick up carrots on Shabbos?
So Michael wants to know, well then how come you can't just start picking your carrots from the ground on Shabbos? What's the answer, everybody? That's a different malacha called kotzer. That's
If you have a rock and you take
whoa, time out. I want to point out, there's two different malachas we're dealing with over here. Michael wants to know, well, if you're not called making a hole, then why are you not allowed to harvest your carrot farm on Shabbos? And it's very simple. The answer is it's a separate malacha called harvesting on Shabbos. You're detaching something from its place of growth. But the case of radishes, you're not doing it. They're not growing anymore. Just a record, why did you have to have the leaves exposed? If the leaves weren't exposed, you'd have a separate issue because the earth is actually muksa on Shabbos, right? Earth that's not designated for a purpose before Shabbos is actually going to be muksa. But if the leaves are exposed, you don't have to touch the earth at all. So there's no muksa issue. And we see there's no issue making holes because you have the holes already. Okay? So if so, we're back to our question, then what's the problem with removing the posts from the weaver's implements? We see that pulling something out of a hole, if the hole's already there, is not a problem making a hole. So the Gemara says, you know what the problem? One second. So the problem is, and Steve alluded to this, the problem is not the making a hole. What happens if you notice a hole in your floor? What do you tend to do then? You fill the hole.
And if you pull out the post, soil might fall into that hole.
And then what?
That is
One second. Let's go step by step. So this is what the Gemara answers. This is the difference between two cases. Let's get this straight. You are allowed to, if you have a vegetable that is already detached from the ground and you just put it in the ground for storage, the halacha is you're allowed to pull it out of the ground on Shabbos. It's not a problem making a hole because the hole's already there. However, if it would be taking place in your house, you would not be allowed to do that. Not because you're making a hole, but because of the next step. If you find a hole in your house, you know what's going to happen? You fill it in. Filling in a hole is also malacha abona, of building, because you're making your floor. You're building your floor. In your field, we're not concerned. Everybody has holes in their field, right? That's not a problem. You're not tempted to, I better fill in this hole in the field. That's okay if you have a hole where your radish was. In your house, you're going to be tempted to fill in the hole. So the Gemara is saying basically like this: pulling something out and just leaving that hole there is not a problem. However, the next step could be a problem depending on its location. If it's in a place where you're going to be tempted to smooth it back in, that's where the problem is. That's why you cannot pull out the posts that are in the floor of your house, of the weaver's loom, because you might be tempted to fill them in on Shabbos, which would be bona. In your field, that's not a problem. Let me just finish this up. Rabbi Yochanan asked Rabbi Yehuda bar Levi, clay kevai kigon covered alim koda tachton, weavers implements like the upper beam or in the lower beam, malataltim Shabbos, you're allowed to move them in Shabbos. Same question we're discussing. Amalei set them in metalton, they may not be moved. So they're muktzah, they may not be moved. Ma'atam, he said, what's the reason? He said, Lafi she'eni talin. He says because they're not moved even during the week, due to their extreme heaviness, they're not made to be moved during the week. Therefore, the kli shemalach isser, a utensil's primary work is for something forbidden, and therefore it would be muktzah Shabbos. Any questions?
I have one. What happens when you pull something out of the hole and the dirt around it fills the hole as you pull it out?
Good question. So I'm thinking about, first of all, a davar shein miskaven. If you have first of all, it's an unintended consequence, which according to Yehuda would be a problem still. I feel like there's a lot of different combinations we could apply over there. So what malacha would that be? Meaning in a house, when you smooth out the holes, that's bona. In a field, you also can, that would probably be a plowing issue. The thing is, it serves you no purpose to fill it in. I mean, I don't know if it's beneficial for your field at all. So it sounds like it would be a davar shein miskaven, which at least according to Rav Shimon, if it's not a psik reisha, if it's not an inevitable consequence, that would probably permit it. But again, it's not your goal. It's not constructive for you. It's not your intent. And if it's not for sure going to happen, I would assume for sure it's okay. If it's for sure going to happen, then I'm not sure if that would border on plowing or not. But I don't know if that's the case. I mean, I don't think that's what's going to happen here. I'll prove it to you that I don't believe so. Because the Gemara says the concern is you're going to smooth out you're going to fill in the holes. You're going to level out the holes. So it sounds like the hole will remain there even after you pull out the thing that's in the hole. So it sounds like just the way we're talking about it is when you pull out these posts, it's not going to be filled back in. And the question is, you will be tempted to fill back in. If you could say for sure the dirt on the side will fill in the hole, I'm not sure. We would have to apply, basically, we'd have to apply a bunch of rules to that. We would have to call it either malacha she'nitzrich l'gufa, that you're doing one act and it's causing another act. We'd apply probably the davar shein miskaven, that's an unintended consequence. We probably have to ask ourselves if it's a psik reisha or not. So that's what my thoughts on that. All right?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, Rabbi, if you were outside and there was a big rock and then you pulled it out, it was in the ground about, a few inches or whatever, and you're exposing that hole. What's the malacha on that? First of all, a big rock you're not allowed to pull out of the ground in Shabbos because it's muktzah. A rock is muktzah unless you designate it before Shabbos to use it for permitted usage. So that's the starting point. Okay.
So if you pull out the rock and then what happened? You exposed it. What happened? You exposed the pole?
The hole.
Pull out a rock exposing a hole. So that's similar to our cases. It doesn't sound like that unless you want a hole in the ground. That could be worse. I mean, if I want...
Right.
But again, I don't think that's malacha plowing because the hole is there already. So that sounds more of a muktzah issue, which is just your rock is muktzah. Sounds like that would be the biggest issue as far as I'm aware that we're dealing with.
Okay, thanks.
But again, in a house, that would be you have to keep in mind, and in those days, the floors of their houses are made out of dirt often.
Right.
And again, in a house, there's a separate issue that we're concerned you might come to smooth it out. Now, I would tell you, by the way, if you're in a backyard, and let's just say in your backyard, you don't want holes in your backyard, and you would smooth out holes. That may fall under this rabbinic decree of the house that you might come to smooth it out. So that might be a separate issue. Okay. So before, we were talking about making knots in garments. Let's talk about the halacha of folding garments. Now, what's the concern if you fold a garment on Shabbos? So you're making creases in it, which may be perfecting or completing this garment. So like this. Let's talk about the halachas of folding garments. You are allowed to fold garments even 4 or 5 times on Shabbos. And again, your goal in folding it is to prevent it from getting wrinkled, because if it's it loses its stiffness when you launder it, and it gets creased. And if you fold it, that helps it keep its lines in place and not get wrinkled. So you are allowed to fold it 4 or 5 times. There's 2 separate issues we're going to be dealing with. One is going to be an issue of perfecting and finishing, completing this garment by making the creases. And the second issue is going to be if I don't need it for Shabbos, that's going to be an issue of hachana. You're not allowed to do an action on Shabbos to prepare for after Shabbos. Okay, so those are 2 issues we have to keep in mind. Yes, this will have extreme relevance to whether you're allowed to fold your talis on Shabbos. Absolutely. So mekalpan is a kamafil arba v'chamisha. Problem, you are allowed to fold garments even 4 or 5 times. Umatzian es hamita is milele Shabbos to Shabbos. You're allowed to make your bed on Friday night because you want to have a made bed of Shabbos by day. Avoloy Shabbos moitzai Shabbos. You're not allowed to make your bed on Shabbos in order to have a made bed Matzi Shabbos, because that's a hachana issue that you're preparing. You're not allowed to prepare from Shabbos to after Shabbos. Okay? There are people that stay up all night Friday night learning Torah, by the way, just a record. I don't know if that's, I'm pretty sure Nosson Tzvi Finkel used to do that. All night Friday night. That's a good question. Why are you making your bed Friday night? Well, I do remember Yitzhak Berkowitz talking about this, that making your bed, it's not necessarily means after you sleep in it, you want your bed to look nice during the day. There's also counts of making your bed that you actually set up your bed that you can sleep in it. So maybe Friday nights, I don't know why you're...
So Saturday morning, I can't make my bed?
What's that in a Friday night bed? Okay. Whatever reason, this person wants to make his bed Friday night because he wants to sleep on it Shabbos afternoon shluff. I don't know. He's got his Shabbos afternoon shluff bed and he's got his Friday night bed. And Friday night, he's looking at his Shabbos afternoon shluff bed. He's like, no, that doesn't look good. I need it to look really enticing for my Shabbos afternoon nap. So he wants to make it up Friday night so it looks really good for Friday, Shabbos afternoon. Are you allowed to do that or not? The answer is yes, you're allowed to, because that's making it for Shabbos need. Shabbos afternoon after you go to sleep, and you're like, oh, I better make my bed up so I can go to sleep tonight, that you're not allowed to do it. If it bothers you greatly, just another caveat when it comes to the halachas of preparation, if you're like, I can't function with an unmade bed on Shabbos, so I need to make it. So you're not making it because you need it for tonight. You're making it because you can't function on Shabbos. That might be allowed, because there your goal is not for tonight. Your goal is for right now. Okay. Now there's been another interesting halacha, which is, so you're not allowed to prepare on Shabbos for after Shabbos. What if you're preparing on Shabbos for Yom Kippur, or preparing for Yom Kippur to Shabbos? Nowadays, we don't have Yom Kippur. I don't think we have it on a Friday, or we definitely don't have it on a Friday. I don't think we have it on a Sunday either, as far as I'm aware. What? Right, we don't have 2 days that people can't be buried. So, but in those days, it was based on people testifying about the new moon. So it definitely was possible to have Yom Kippur back to back with Shabbos. So B'Shmuel Omer, so the question is, can you prepare from one day to next? Now we know in general, Shabbos has a higher sanctity, either has an equal sanctity or a higher sanctity than Yom Kippur. So B'Shmuel, we're now in 113a4. B'Shmuel Omer says, Mekaplin es hakelim l'mtzinas es amitas b'Yom Kippur l'Shabbos. Says, if Yom Kippur falls out on a Friday, you are allowed to prepare your bed or fold your clothing on Yom Kippur for the sake of Shabbos, because Shmuel holds that Shabbos has a higher sanctity than Yom Kippur, so you are allowed to prepare from Yom Kippur to Shabbos. This doesn't mean you're doing malachas, but it's just regarding the concept of preparation. The chelvei Shabbos craven b'Yom Kippur, and the fats from Shabbos offerings are allowed to be offered on Yom Kippur. So if Yom Kippur falls out Matzei Shabbos, if you have fats from offerings you brought on Shabbos, you're allowed to burn them on Yom Kippur, because again, Shabbos has a higher sanctity. So on Yom Kippur, you're allowed to do things that were relating to Shabbos. But you're not allowed to burn fats from Yom Kippur offerings on Shabbos, because that's degrading to Shabbos, because Shabbos is a higher sanctity, so you shouldn't be doing Yom Kippur needs on Shabbos. Rabbi Kiva says, Shabbos Yom Kippur, Shabbos. Rabbi Kiva says, no, we view both Shabbos and Yom Kippur more on a similar status, which means you cannot prepare from one to the other. So you cannot burn fats from Shabbos to Yom Kippur or fats from Yom Kippur to Shabbos. Okay. Amri debei Rabbi Yana, they say in the Shiva Rabbi Yana, Laishanu alabadam echad. When the Mishnah says that you're allowed to fold a garment on Shabbos even 4 or 5 times, That's talking about if one person is doing this folding procedure. But regarding two people together folding a garment, that would not be allowed. And the reason is Rashi says, because when two people do it, they're much more particular to smooth out the wrinkles, which looks like you're fixing up the garment. So it looks like tikkun mana, which is makapatish. It looks at least like that you're doing the final hammer blow because you're completing the garment by making these smoothing out the wrinkles. Okay. So again, so we're gonna have a bunch of different qualifications to that which the Mishnah says that you are allowed to fold a garment on Shabbos. So again, is only for one person. Two people cannot fold it together. Even one person who's folding it. We're only talking about new clothing. Even one person is not allowed to fold old clothing. New garments are stiff and not easily wrinkled. So therefore, folding them is only considered a minor benefit. Older garments, folding them in a nice way actually improves them a lot. So that looks more like the final hammer blow. Okay? So old garments would not be okay. And even when it comes to new garments that we're allowing for one person, this is only regarding white garments. Where colored garments would not be allowed. And this is because colored garments get more improved when you fold them. So not colored garments. And this is only if you don't have other clothes to change into. So you need it for Shabbos needs. But if you have other clothing you could change into, there's no reason why you need to fold your clothing. That means you're just folding it for tomorrow, not for today, because you have more clothing you can wear today. And therefore, that would not be allowed. So there's a lot of qualifications to what would be allowed. Basically, only one person with new clothing. It has to be white garments, and you don't have any other, and you need to wear this garment today. Okay, Taisus discusses what if you have other garments you can change into, but they don't look as nice as this garment. So, so can you do that or not? Tana, it was Tana Breitzer, shall base in the house of members of the house of Gamliel, like how you they would not fold even their white garments in Shabbos, because since they had other garments to change into, even white garments they would not change because they would just change into other garments instead. Amr of Huno. I'm just going to read here, just for record, no 33-second paragraph. Just read this. The Shulchan Aruch rules that the prohibition to fold clothing applies only where one is careful to do so along previously made creases, since any other folds have no permanence. This ruling is accepted by later authorities. Nevertheless, the Mishnah Berurah comments that one who refrains from folding clothing even not according to the original creases is certainly acting in a preferred manner. So when it comes to folding your talis, you definitely are not allowed to fold it on the creases on Shabbos. Actually, this is definitely what many have accepted. I'm not sure if I'm not sure if there's some lenient opinions about this or not. I'll tell you what my practice is. I'm not sure if there are those who are lenient about it, but this is how I've grown up. That basically, you cannot fold the talis on the creases. If you've heard that you could, let me look into it. I'm not sure if there are those who allow it, but the way I've heard over is you don't fold it on the creases. You are allowed to fold it not on the creases, and some people don't fold them at all. Rather, they kind of just like do a very loose kind of folding or bundle it up till after Shabbos. But definitely, I don't know if there are some lenient opinions, but definitely I've heard over many will say you don't fold a talis on the creases. This comes up for pants as well. Like you want to hang up your pants, put on the creases. I've heard that could be a big problem because again, so if you take off your pants and then you want to hang them up, I've heard not to hang it in a way that it goes along the same creases as the same issue here. If you've heard otherwise, we could talk about it because again, I don't know if everybody holds to this or not. If you're not, you could hold it. Michael wants to know if you're allowed to hang it over a coat rack. Yeah, why not? Yeah. I fold it, just not on the creases. I know other people that just won't fold it at all. It just depends what you're going to do with it. You could hang it up somewhere. Right. So I fold it not on the creases. So I know which way I usually fold it. I fold it a different way. But other people don't even want to do that. Other people will just like hang it up or drape it over something. But even if you're draping it over something, don't drape it over on the creases.
Right.
Okay. What?
It sounds like if you don't fold it on the creases, that you're creating new creases.
That would take some work to actually create a new crease. You would have to you would have to press it or something. Just folding it on Shabbos on a non-crease. It creates a wrinkled situation. Doesn't create, let's say, a good crease. You would have there's ways to make creases. All right, let's see further. Again, Mirz Hashem, I want to get to Shabbos home. Mirz Hashem will get to more of these in practice. But if you have a question in practice, we could talk about that. Amar Rav Huna said, if you have other clothing, Yachlif, you should ideally just change into those instead of folding your garments in order to wear them. Just put on other ones. Now we're switching. We're switching from folding to, in general, honor. We're going to get now into the halachas of honoring Shabbos. So forget about the malachas. We're talking about there's a mitzvah to honor Shabbos. So once we mentioned the concept of changing your clothing regarding folding clothing, let's talk about in general the clothing you should wear in Shabbos. So Amar Rav Huna says, if you have the ability to change out of your weekday clothes and wear special Shabbos clothing, Yachlif, you should do that in honor of Shabbos. If you don't have other clothing, you shall at least let down your weekday clothing. Basically, the poor people would hitch their clothing up under their belts so the clothing would be lifted high and not interfere with their work. Wealthy people stayed at home, didn't have such concerns. They wore their clothing long to the ground. So Rav Huna says, if you don't have a change of clothing, at least lower your clothing on Shabbos to make it look nicer. Maskefla Rav Safra challenges, that looks like haughtiness. If you're looking so prestigious, on Shabbos, I'm so prestigious, I have my clothing hanging low, not only low by your belt, I mean low that your pants are hitting the floor. That looks like haughtiness. The Gemara says, since he doesn't do this every day, but he's only doing it today, it doesn't look like haughtiness, rather it looks like you're doing it for the honor of Shabbos. I'm wondering if some people nowadays, they walk around with their pants hanging really low. I wonder if they read this Gemara wrong and they thought that that's what it means. Okay, let's talk about the halacha now of honoring Shabbos. The pasuk in Yeshaya, the pasuk you should honor it by not doing your ways. You should honor Shabbos. Your dress of Shabbos, your way of dressing on Shabbos should not be like during the weekdays. So we have a mitzvah in the Navi to wear special Shabbos clothing. And this is so much of Yochanan, he referred to his clothing as that what caused him honor. So in Pasuk, you should honor Shabbos. It's referring to your clothing because clothing is what gives honor to the person and to Shabbos. By not doing your ways. The way you walk on Shabbos should not be like the way you walk during the week, which we'll see about. The Pasuk in Yeshaya continues, from seeking your wants. Your wants are forbidden on Shabbos, so don't get involved in your financial affairs on Shabbos. But for financial affairs of heaven, you are allowed to get involved, and therefore, for example, to pledge donations to a shul on Shabbos is allowed. To tell your partner, I'll give you $10 tomorrow, is not allowed. But to tell a shul, you are, and that's because this pasuk says only your financial needs you're not allowed to discuss, but you are allowed to give pledges, or to arrange for girls to get betrothed, which is a mitzvah. Those you would be allowed to, because that would be for the sake of heaven. V'daber davar, and speaking your words. We're now in Kufya Gimel Beis, 113b1. The way you speak on Shabbos should be different than the way you speak during the week. For example, we don't talk about business affairs on Shabbos. You don't make special calculations on Shabbos. Some say even permitted matters, you should speak in a more refined, careful manner on Shabbos. Dibur aser, speaking is forbidden, hear mutter, but thoughts would be permitted. So if you need to make, let's say you have something that's really bothering you about your business and you really need to think about it. So you should not be speaking about it on Shabbos. To make a quick calculation in your mind, it might not be ideal, but that's not forbidden. So thoughts are not forbidden. It's the speaking about it which is forbidden. Other people, if you can develop an attitude like on Shabbos, I'm done with my business, that would be ideal. But if something's really on your mind, you're allowed to think about it, but you shouldn't be speaking about it. Here, mutter, thought is permitted. So Gemara says, I can understand all these. I understand. What does that mean? You shouldn't walk on Shabbos like you walk during the week. Are you supposed to walk on your hands on Shabbos? Like, how do you walk differently? Like, what do you do differently when you walk? Kihada Amar Rav Huna Marav, like that which Rav Huna said Marav, but Amar Amar Rav Abba Rav Huna, some say Rav Abba said name Rav Huna. If you're walking on Shabbos and you encounter a stream of water, is it permitted to jump over the stream of water on Shabbos? So if you could put down your first foot on the other side of the stream before you have to pick up your second foot, mutter, that's permitted. Basically, if you could walk over it, it's permitted. Vimlav aser, but if you're going to need to leap over it or jump over it, that would be forbidden. So basically, you should not be jumping on Shabbos. Maskefla Rava challenges, hold on a second. Hey, so what are you supposed to do? You encounter this stream of water. Let's go through, and you're not able to walk over it. And we just said you're not allowed to jump over it. So what are the other options over here? Hey, what you do? Leikav, so maybe you should walk an extra 15 minutes all the way around the stream. Is that what you're supposed to do? Kamapish bihilucha, you're walking. That doesn't sound right. If your whole purpose is you want to relax on Shabbos and not jump, by walking around it, you're actually straining yourself more. It doesn't make sense. That's what you should need to do. The aver, so maybe you should be walking through the stream instead of jumping over it. Well, then his clothing might get soaked with water, and then that will come to the malacha of squeezing out the water. So I don't have any other better options. It's hard to imagine you're not allowed to jump over it. Rather, since you don't have an option, you would be allowed to jump over the stream. So we're still stuck. So what is the prohibition that you have to walk differently on Shabbos? Rather that which Rabbi asked of Shmuel son of Yossi, are you allowed to take a long stride on Shabbos? Amrullah, Shmuel said to him, who said you're allowed to take long strides during the week? Shani Aimer, because I say, I say a long stride takes away 1/500th of the light of a person's eyes. So Rabbi Shmuel held that taking long strides even during the week diminishes your eyesight. Now, it doesn't mean if you take 500 of those strides, you're going to be blind, because each time it's a 500th of what you have left. So it won't, but still, he said it's not a healthy thing to do in general. But just a record, if you do it, what brings back your eyesight? Your eyesight is restored by drinking the Friday evening Kiddush wine. There's different explanations what you have to do with the Kiddush wine, how that restores your eyesight that got diminished by taking long strides. Some say it's the drinking of the Friday night Kiddush wine. Some say it's dabbing the Kiddush wine in your eyes. I've not seen this. I've seen some people do this for Havdalah. I've not seen people do this for Friday night Kiddush. But some do say that does it. Taisus says. The Eri says it could be that the restfulness and the tranquility of Shabbos that's ushered in by the Friday night Kiddush, that restores your vision. So different explanations about that. By the way, you should just know when you make Kiddush, there is an Inyan, a reason some people will actually gaze at the Shabbos lights, at the candles before you make the bracha of Hagafen on Kiddush. Okay, so basically though, we're still stuck. Because it can't be taking the long strides on Shabbos, because even during the week, you're not supposed to be doing that. Okay, I don't know in practice. Does that mean you're not allowed to run? We all play football or basketball, so I don't know in practice how this is followed. I've never heard of anybody say you're not allowed to play basketball or football, even though you're going to be running. So you're allowed to work out on a treadmill. So in practice, I don't know if people do this, or if there's anybody who does this in practice or not. So basically, the Gemara is concluding that it's a taking of long strides, which should not be like you're walking during the week, although some say even during the week you shouldn't be doing that. Just the record as well. So even though we've said even during the week you shouldn't be doing that, but Shabbos, it's worse, which means during the week, if there's a compelling need, they say, you are allowed to take long strides. As opposed to on Shabbos, even if you really need to, you shouldn't be doing it. However, if it's for a mitzvah, you actually are allowed to run even on Shabbos. They say also, during the week, if you take long strides, that can be cured by Friday night Kiddush. As opposed to if you take a long stride on Shabbos, that may not be cured by Friday night Kiddush. But we'll see, the Gemara in Brachas does say, for the sake of a mitzvah, you are allowed to. So if you're running to a class or something, that was not included in this prohibition. So for the sake of a mitzvah, that would be allowed. Okay, Rabbi Shmuel. See, Rabbi asked Rabbi Shmuel, are you allowed to eat earth on Shabbos? The Meir says there are certain remedies from eating certain types of earth. So he wanted to know if that's included in the prohibition of taking medicine on Shabbos. So Amar Loi, he said back to him, and who said you're allowed to eat earth even during the week? I hold, says Rav Shmuel, see that even during the week you're not allowed to do it because I hold that's actually not good for your health. It's bad for your health, and you're not allowed to do it even during the week. So that's just another incident where Rebbe asked a question to Shmuel whether you're allowed to do something Shabbos, and he said back, you're not even allowed to do it during the week. Amr Ba'amir said, anybody who eats the dust of Bavel, it's like he's eating the flesh of his ancestors who died there during the exile after the destruction of the first base. English Rashi says, whose bodies are reverted to dust. Some say it's like he's eating the vermin and crawling creatures that all died during the flood. It says during the flood, he blotted out all the existence. And we know that Bavel is a low-lying area where the receding floodwaters deposited the remains of all these dead creatures. So there's a lot of people and vermin that the dust of Bavel is made out of. Amrish, we're now 113b2. Amrish Lakish said, Lamanikar Shema Shinner. Why is Bavel called Shinner? Shekom Mesi Mabel Ninaru Lasham, because all the dead of the flood were dumped there. I always mix it up. Is Bavel Iraq or Iran? Iraq. Okay, so somebody do a study on this the soil of Iraq. Tell me if it's different or not than other soils. Huh? Amr Yochanan said, Lamanikar Shema Matsula. Why is Bavel named the deep? Shekom Mesi Mabel Nitztalu Lasham, because all the dead of the flood sank there. V'yesh Aimrem, and others say Kilo Oichel Shkatzim Ratzim. Some say it's like he's eating vermin and crawling creatures. V'havadis Machuye Tamchum. Why is it like he's eating creatures? They've been dissolved over the years and they've been dissolved by the waters. So Amr, they said, Kivin de Malki, since eating earth is not good for your health, Gazr B'Rabanan, the rabbis decreed against it on these grounds. They said you should not eat it to prevent people from eating this potentially harmful substance. Because there's a certain man who ate clay, and then he ate cress, and the cress sprouted up into his heart, and he died. The cress took root in the clay and began growing the man's innards, and he died when the cress came in contact with his heart, Rashi says. Okay, continue onward regarding Shabbos finery. So now we have the story where with Rus going out to meet Boaz, who did Yibum on Rus, and eventually we know that Mashiach came from this, and we know David and Mashiach came from this union. So Naomi tells Rus when she's going to greet Boaz, you should bathe and anoint yourself and don your garments. So Amr Belazar said, Eilu begadam shel Shabbos. She's telling her, go wear your special Shabbos garments. So now we have examples where one person tells somebody something and they take it and they even figure out how to make it even wiser. So the pasuk says, give to a wise man and he'll be even wiser. It's a pasuk in Mishnah. Amr Belazar says, Zu Rus HaMaviyah Shmuel Ramasi. These are incidents with Rus the Moavi and Shmuel the Ramasi. Both of them received instructions and they figured out how to take the instructions to the next level. Rus, because regarding Rus, because Nami told Rus, you'll bathe and anoint yourself and put on your garments. If you're rather to Hagarin, you go down to the threshing floor to meet Boaz. So Nami told her to get dressed up and then go out to the threshing floor to meet Boaz. But Rus did not carry out those instructions to the letter. When you see what Rus did, it says, first she went down to the threshing floor, and then she got dressed up. She did like all that her mother-in-law instructed her. Now, why did she do that? Because she didn't want to get dressed up and walk all fancy across the fields. People might think that she's a prostitute. So she understood Naomi's instruction that she has to get dressed up, but she realized she should get dressed up after she gets to the threshing floor, not walking across the whole field all dressed up. Shmuel So now Shmuel, Di'ilu Eli Karmelech. So now we have the story with Shmuel when he found out he was becoming a prophet. So Hashem kept on calling his name, and he didn't know that this was a prophecy. He thought that was Shmuel calling him, or Eli calling him. Shmuel Di'ilu Eli Karmelech. So Eli said to Shmuel, Shechav, lie down, v'hayim mikra elecha, v'amarta daber Hashem ki shemei avdecha. So Eli told Shmuel, go back to sleep, lie down, and if this voice calls out to you, you shall say, speak, O Hashem, for your servant is listening. That's how Eli told Shmuel to receive the prophecy. But when Shmuel himself, what does it say about him? Vayavai Hashem, it says Hashem came, Vayisyatev, and stood, Vayikra kefam b'fam Shmuel Shmuel, and this voice from heaven called out again, Shmuel Shmuel, Vayomer Shmuel, daber k'shmei avdechem. Shmuel said, speak, because your servant is listening. V'lo yomer daber Hashem. Shmuel did not say, speak Hashem. So Eli said, say, speak Hashem. Shmuel did not say that because he was concerned. He didn't know for sure it was Hashem speaking to him. He thought it was somebody else or something else speaking to him, and he did not want to say Hashem's name in vain. So he listened to instructions, but he changed a little bit to make it even smarter. Okay, let's talk about the story with Rus. Vatelech, it says Rus went, Vatovai vatalakit basada. She came and she was gleaning in the field of Boaz. Amr Boaz said, Shahalchu bas, halchu bas. She went and came, she went and came. Until she found decent people to accompany them. So implied she kept on going till she found decent harvesters that she could be in the good company of. She didn't want to be in the company of bad individuals. We're now 113b3. Vayomer Boaz lenaroi. So now Boaz noticed Rus being there, and he said to his servant, Hanitzav al-Koitzim, who's overseeing the harvesters, Lemia nara zost. Who does this woman belong to? So he was asking about who is this woman? Now Boaz was one of the greatest leaders of the generation. Why is he asking about every girl that comes to his field? Was it Boaz's practice to ask about, again, he was the leading sage of the generation. Why is he asking about every girl that comes to his field? Was that his practice? Amr B'Lazar said, Devar Chachma Rabba. He saw something exceptional about Rus, which is what made him take notice. A lot of wisdom that she was using. Why? Shnei shibal liketa. If there are 2 ears of grain, she would glean them that fell from the harvester's hands. This is a mitzvah of leket, where 2 ears fall, you have to leave it for the poor. Shloisha shibal liketa. But 3 ears of grain, she would not glean. And that's because she knew the mitzvah of leket only applies to 2 ears of grain and not 3. So she only had a right to take 2, not 3, but not everybody knew that. The Masnisa Tana and Abraisa is taught Devar Tznius Rabbi. He saw she was exceptionally modest. The standing ears of grain, she gleaned while she was standing. Neuflis miyushav, the fallen ears of grain, she would glean while she was sitting down. Instead of bending over, which would expose her legs, she would make sure to sit down and do it. So she was extremely modest. And Bo was like, wow, since it was an anomaly in the field to have a girl who was so modest, so sneas, he's like, what's that girl doing here? So then Boaz told Rus, and here you shall cleave with my maidens. Was it Boaz's practice to cleave with the women? So now, first of all, the comments do ask, it doesn't say he cleaved with the women. He says he told Rus to cleave with them. But they say that the word dabek is actually referring to like marital unions. That's the word dabek is like be very close to somebody. So why is he using that expression? Amr B'Lazar said, once he saw that Arpa kissed her mother-in-law and left, but Rus cleaved unto her mother-in-law to Naomi, which means that she was ready to convert, and that Rus was a true convert, and she really wanted to follow in the ways of the Torah. Amr Sharila de Bukei Bam. He says, I guess I'm allowed to attach myself to marry Rus. So that's what it's hinting to. I see I'm allowed to marry her because she converted for the right purposes. Therefore, she's a true convert, and therefore will be allowed for me to marry her. That's why he mentioned that expression, which references the concept of marriage. So Boaz said to her at the mealtime, come over here. So what was this word halom referencing? Amr B'Lazar said, Remez Ramazlah. He alluded to her, Asida Malchus Beisav Latsis Mimech, the kingdom of the house of David is destined to come forth from you. The Ksibbe Haloim, where we have the same word halom was written about it. Shnemer is written, Vayavay Melch David, the king David came, Vayeshav Lefnei Hashem, he sent him from Hashem, Vayomer, and he said, Mi anochi Hashem Lakim, Mi Beisi, Ki havi oisani adalom, who am I, Hashem, and what is my house that you brought me to here? So Boaz was alluding with his words that David HaMelech would come from her. V'taval pitech b'chometz, dip your morsel in the vinegar. Amar Rabbi Elazar said, Mikan shechometz yafel l'sharav, we see that vinegar is beneficial in the hot weather. Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amar Shmuel bar Nachmani said, Remez Ramazah, he's actually alluding to her. Asid ben lasis nimech, shemaisav kashin gechometz, a descendant is destined to come forth from you, whose deeds will be as sharp and bitter as vinegar. Umanu Menashe, we know that was Menashe who did evil deeds. Bateshev mitzada koitzrim, so basically he was alluding to her about the whole future that would come out of her. Bateshev mitzada koitzrim says she sat down next to the harvesters. Amar Belazar said mitzada koitzrim v'lebes soicha koitzrim. She sat beside the harvesters, but not in the midst of the harvesters. Remez Ramaz La. So by seating her like this on the other side, so basically Boaz and Ruth were sitting on two separate sides, and the harvesters were in the middle. So he's hinting to her that the kingdom of David would be split, just like they were being separated from each other. So Remez Ramazah, he hinted to her that the kingdom of the house of David would eventually be divided. We know that happened after Shlomo died, that we had Yeravam ben Nevat and Shlomo's son Rechavam ruling over two different parts of the kingdom. By Yitzbat, we're now in 113b4. By Yitzbat la kali vatoichal, he handed her parched grain and she ate and was satisfied and left over. So again, this is also hinting to deep things that happened in the future. Amr Belazar said, "Vatoichal b'mei David." She ate in the days of David. Vatisba b'mei Shlomo. She was satisfied in the days of Shlomo. Vatoisa, she left over b'mei Chizkiah. This is referring to the days of Chizkiah. So these are different levels of wealth, which is the royal descendants of David, Shlomo, Chizkiah, and the riches they received as tribute from the monarchs of the other countries. So that's what it's alluding to. The Ikadamri, others say about Toichal, and she ate, b'mei David b'mei Shlomo. That's referencing both the days of David and his son Shlomo. Batisba b'mei Chizkiah, she was satisfied in the days of Chizkiah. Vatoisa b'mei Rabbi, and she left over in the days of Rabbi. The Amar Mar, as we said before, Yared the Rabbi have a Asir Mishavar Malka. The stable man of Rabbi was wealthier than Shapur, the king of Persia. The Masnisatan and Bryce was taught, Vatoichal ba'il mazeh, she ate in this world, Vatisba l'mos Mashiach, she was satisfied in the Messianic era, Vatoiser lasalave, and she left over in the future to come. Okay, now we have another pasuk. Vasachas kivoda yekad yikoid kikoid eish, and beneath his honor there shall be kindled a flame like the burning of a fire. It's a pasuk in Yeshaya. So Sancheiriv had laid siege to Jerusalem, and he wanted the city to surrender. Sancheiriv warned that even God could not prevent the fall of the city of Jerusalem. Complete arrogance on Sancheiriv's part. Hashem did a miracle led by King Chizkiah and the prophet Yeshaya. They davened to Hashem, and that night a heavenly angel destroyed Sancheiriv's Erev, killing 185,000 men. Okay, so this is talking about, Yeshaya is talking about the destruction of Sancheiriv's army, and it says this Assyrian soldiers will be burned to death. So it says beneath his honor shall be kindled a flame like the burning of a fire. That's how the soldiers were burned to death beneath their clothing. Amar B'Yochanan said, "V'sachas kivoid," it means beneath his honor. V'loi kivoid mamish, but not his actual honor, which means their bodies were burned, but not their clothing. So only beneath, we said the clothing was what gives the honor, right? So the bodies were burned, but the garments were untouched. It was a complete miraculous fire. It burned them up, but not their clothing. Rabbi Yochanan Tameh, this is Rabbi Yochanan consistent with his reasoning. Rabbi Yochanan called lemane mechabdusa, as we see, Rabbi Yochanan called his clothing his honor. So the pasuk says, underneath the honor they were burned, which means the clothing themselves, which is the honor, was not burned. Rabbi Elazar says, "V'sachas kivodim." It says, in place of his honor, there should be kindled a flame. Tachas kivodim mamish means in place of the actual honor. So he interprets the pasuk a little differently. That instead of beneath the garments, it's in place of the garments, which is in place of the bodies of a certain army. There would be fire and ashes, which means the bodies would be consumed in fire, but the clothes remained unscathed. So according to Rabbi Elazar, he agrees that their bodies, but he holds the honor is the bodies. So basically, the first explanation is beneath the honor. So the honor is the clothing, and beneath the honor means their bodies, which are beneath their clothing. According to Rabbi Elazar, he agrees their bodies, but he says it means their honor, in place of their honor, which is in place of their bodies, they are burnt up. So their bodies are burned. So they both agree it's just the bodies, just two different ways how to get there. Tachas kavod mamash. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani Amar, Tachas kavod kisreifas b'nei Aaron. When it says beneath the honor, it's referencing just like the burning of the two sons of Aharon that died. Ma'lahalan sreifas neshama v'guf kaim. Just like by the case of the death of Aaron's two sons, the soul was burned, but the body remained intact. Avkan sreifas neshama v'guf kaim. He says, no, their bodies were not burned. It was just their souls were burned, but their bodies actually stayed intact. Where do we have an allusion to the concept of changing your garments is a form of giving honor? It's written, he shall remove his garments and put other garments and bring out the ashes for the Trumas Hadashen. So here we have a concept in the Torah that there's a concept that for certain, you change your clothing in order to honor the situation. Certain situations have less honorable and you have different types of clothing. Other situations is more honor, so you have more honorable clothing. All right. Any questions? Shkoyach.
Thank you.
All right. So let's just do a little Shabbos kitchen here.
Thank you, Oli.
Thank you. Okay. So we discussed adding cold water to a hot drink. So we said, which vessel can you add cold water in? So we said basically you're allowed to add cold water to a kli sheni, to a second vessel, or you're allowed to add a lot of cold water at once to a hot vessel. If as soon as it hits, it'll cool it off below 110 degrees. Adding hot water to cold water, how does that work out? One may not pour hot water from a kettle or urn into a cup containing, so you cannot pour from a kli rishon into a cup containing some cold water. It is, however, permissible to add a small amount of hot water to a larger quantity of cold water if the resulting mixture will not be yatzolet as well. Okay, so let's just think about this for a second. So if you have your urn is which vessel? What level is that? Your urn is a kli rishon, right? When you pour from your urn to your cup, so the cup is called a kli sheni, right? But the actual pouring stream is called Iroi Kli Rishon, the pourings of a Kli Rishon, which we've seen the pourings of a Kli Rishon have the ability to cook just like a Kli Rishon. How is this relevant? Let's say you take your mug and you wash it out with water, and now you want to make your coffee, okay? So you put you now want to take water from the urn and put it into your cup. What do you have to be aware about?
Anything else in the cup?
Think about the droplets of water that are in the bottom of your cup because you just washed out your cup. If you now pour hot water from your urn into that could be an issue of cooking that water because that's called Iroi Kli Rishon. The pourings of a Kli Rishon have the potential to cook. So we'll see more about this, Meretz Hashem, but we'll see it's not so simple. Now, it may depend if those droplets were cooked already or not. So if you wash out your mug, and now you have droplets in the bottom of your cup because you didn't dry it out, that could be an issue of cooking water that's never been cooked before. How about if you, excellent, Michael wants to know what if it's been cooked before. So that's actually machlokas. If you have to be as stringent on droplets that have already been cooked, which we do say you're not allowed to recook them, it may be different once you're cooked already, but maybe not. That's actually machlokas. If you have a mug that had cooked water already, and you have some droplets in there. There are those who say you still cannot hit that with a stream of the urn, and some say we don't have to be as particular about that. But definitely, if you washed out your cup, so that's uncooked water on the bottom of your urn, that definitely you can on the bottom of your mug, that's a problem. You have to make sure that your mug is dried out before you pour the hot water in it from the urn.
Isn't that the same issue with the moisture at the
So Gil wants to know, what about the moisture on the top of the handle of the pot? I just want to find, what? So this is the same question. Let me read this about the serving soup or liquid cholent with a ladle. When using a ladle to serve soup from a pot, the ladle should not be allowed to cool between servings. If some time elapsed and the ladle did cool off, it is preferable that one shake any excess liquid from the ladle before reinserting into the pot to avoid recooking the droplets of cold soup remaining in the ladle. So even though we've said from a status of creating the bowl in front of you into kli shlishi, you're better off if you don't dip your ladle in successively. But keep in mind, if you do that, there's a separate issue that you're recooking the remnants of the droplets of the soup that have cooled off. That's a problem if they're not still warm. The same holds true when replacing the cover on a pot of hot food. If the cover was left off long enough to cool, you now have droplets on the cover that you're recooking when you put it back on. It is preferable that one shake off any liquid from the cover before placing it in the pot. Note in the following chapter, we'll see that a ladle may not be used at all unless the pot is first removed from the block. Okay, so like this. If you have droplets, the droplets are kind of insignificant, so there it makes it as follows. If the droplets were never cooked yet, that's for sure an issue. You cannot cook. You cannot take uncooked droplets and put them in contact with a kli rishon or pouring of kli rishon. If you have cooked droplets, where we are stringent and we say you're not allowed to still cook again, there we say it's preferable to make sure not you're cooking them. But according to letter of the law, it's not as bad because recooking a liquid that's been cooked already, even though you're not allowed to do it, it's not as bad as cooking something that has never been cooked. So if you have droplets that have never been cooked, you must make sure that they're dry. If you have droplets that have been cooked but cooled, preferably you also should make sure to dry that off. Alan has a question.
Would boiling be considered the same thing as
Boiling and cooking is the same thing, yes. What do you mean? Cooking is you.
well, boiling is, you're really bringing, for example, water. You don't cook water, you just change it.
So Alan is pointing out that when you heat up
When you cook, you sort of go from a certain state to a different
physical change,
chemical state.
chemical change.
Right. Like,
Alan is pointing out that when you cook food, is that called a physical change or a chemical change?
I would consider it chemical because you're breaking down.
Okay, so
certain
Alan
chemicals.
is pointing out a valid point. Yes.
Food, like say for instance a potato. Okay, you can't eat a raw potato.
Right.
because
Yeah, yeah.
it's totally cellulose, but that's like eating hay.
Yeah. So again, Alan is pointing out,
The chemical structure.
right. Yeah, I'm going to answer your question now. So Alan is pointing out a valid point, which we've addressed a few times, but again, it's worth going over. When you cook a food, you're creating a chemical change in the food from a raw state to an edible state. When you are boiling a liquid, you are not creating a chemical change. You're just changing the temperature of the liquid. So the physical state of it. So how can we compare the two? And the answer is that by foods, we are actually more stringent, which is actually a stringency and it's a leniency. So basically by foods, you're right, that is, we create the physical change, that is cooking. Now boiling though, we look for constructive acts. That's what Shabbos is, right? So what is it, if I have water, what is the constructive act that I need to do? If I want to drink a hot tea, I need to boil this water to make it that I can enjoy it. However, since I didn't make a chemical change to the water, that's why once the water cools off, we say it's forbidden to heat it up again because you're doing the same thing of boiling again. So therefore we say by liquids that cooled off, you're not allowed to reheat them. As opposed to when you cook a food, since once a chemical change took place, you're not creating another chemical change when you cook it again. And the main significance of food is that chemical change. Therefore, food that was cooked, we said you are allowed to recook it. So that's the difference when it comes to redoing it. All right?
We're allowed to reheat a liquid that is still warm.
Sid, are you asking why, or are you pointing out that you are allowed to?
I'm pointing it out, I think.
Yes. If the liquid was heated up and it's still warm, that's considered like it still remains in it, that constructive benefit it got when you heat it up, because it's still warm, still has that heat inside of it. Therefore, you are allowed to heat that up. So for example, if you have droplets in a cup that are still warm, or the steam on the condensation that's still warm, that's totally fine to put it back on. Where it cooled off, so then again, if it was never cooked, you definitely have to make sure not to cook it. If it was cooked once, but you're gonna heat it up again, preferably you wanna make sure that you dry that off. All right?
And what do you do if you violated this thing?
Which thing?
You heated up water that you shouldn't have heated up in a cup. But you don't know that you did it. Or you find out that you did it.
So the rules of Ma'aseh Shabbos after you've messed up we'll see about Mitzvah. There are certain cases where there's a rabbinic penalty that you're not allowed to drink it, and certain cases where we don't make it. I would imagine if it was already cooked once, this liquid, and then you heat it up again, in general, there's more leniencies there. Because again, there's two opinions as to whether that's a problem or not. So the rules of if you mess up is a separate set of rules. There are certain times when it's not a problem at all. And there are certain times that mess ups in cooking, you would have to wait till after Shabbos or the amount of time after Shabbos it takes to cook it before you could consume that. So Mitzvah, we'll see a little bit about that. We'll get to the Gemara. We didn't do the Gemaras in Daf Yomi about that either. We'll get to those Gemaras also about that. All right? Shkach, everybody have a good Shabbos.
All right. Good Shabbos. Thank you, Rabbi.
Remember, if you have the opportunity to review, this is a great opportunity to review what we learned during the week on Shabbos, because we're not doing Daf Yomi on Shabbos, but it's a great opportunity to review what we've learned during the week. All right. Take care, everybody. Shkach.
See you later.